Hello and welcome. I am Ricardo, aka the Mad Hatter, and this is going to be a series on color theory. Throughout the years, I spent a lot of time researching the topics that we're going to discuss in this series. The resources I could find were often scattered between websites, the YouTube videos, books, forums. So the goal with this series is to condense that knowledge into short and simplified videos to help you throughout your journey to become a better colorist, or in general, into creative manipulation of light and color. Light. That is where we will start, as color is nothing but how we perceive light. Today we're going to discuss a much underrated topic, but one that is crucial. It might seem simple in theory, but we often forget about it as we grade. And personally, I struggled with it quite a lot until I understood it. And then it completely changed the way I grade. What is light? How does it behave when it encounters different materials and objects? In general, how do we justify light? Bear with me for a second now as I go on a scientific detour on what is light. Okay, but how does this relate to our narration? After all, at the beginning, I stated that this is going to be a series on creative use of light and color. Well, think about it this way. If you want to become a race driver, you first need to understand how a car works, clutch, pedal, stick, before you can actually focus on lap times. Today, we're going to focus on what we define as visible light, or in other words, the light that we can perceive with our naked eye. In a later video, we're going to discuss also ultraviolet and infrared light, as there are techniques that use them. But for now, let's stick with the basics. Also, to further simplify the content of the video, let's for now discard completely the part regarding color and focus on light as monochromatic. Okay, let's make one last simplification. Scientifically, light behaves both as an electromagnetic wave and as a particle. For today, we're going to just focus on the particle. Let's now imagine throwing a ball. Ideally, that will continue straight until it encounters an obstacle that either deviates it or stops it completely. Light as a particle behaves the same way. It emits from a source and will continue straight until it encounters something that diffuses it, deflects it, or blocks it. With this concept in our mind, let's now jump into DaVinci and look at some real scenarios. Okay, here we are in DaVinci, and this is the project that I want to discuss with you today. It is a project that originally is not in black and white, and the grade has been already applied to all the shots in here. So what you're going to see is simply my grade in black and white. Because as I said at the beginning, I want to discard completely the chromatic aspect and just focus on light. Oh, and by the way, if you want to watch this video graded, I'll leave a link below in the description. I chose this specific project because effectively, given how this is shot, you can tell simply the direction of the light. So this is a shot that I used as reference. I used it because it had a pleasurable amount of contrast, so between dark areas and the light areas. It had a lot of this haze, this directionality to the light. So it had all the elements that I really wanted. As a matter of fact, I didn't do any relighting here. On a shot level here, I just applied some noise reduction, as you can see here. So if we take in our scopes now, that you can see here, you can see that basically we're using quite a lot of dynamic range, which makes sense. You know, we are on a almost silhouette sort of shot, okay? And the only peculiar thing about this grade in terms of black and white is that the blacks are heavily lifted. Okay, or not heavily lifted, it's still high contrast here, but there's a decisive lift. Reason being, there's a lot of haze going on, okay? And we want to make that evident by lifting the blacks. Why does haze influence the blacks, and why does it make the blacks lift? Because effectively, when you have haze, when you have dust and all this stuff, it scatters light. Scattering light means that if our light has a specific direction, if this room didn't have any haze, the light would go on a straight line, okay? But as you can see here, if I zoom in, we don't have a defined line, but rather we have, you know, a scattering. This is because the haze is actually bouncing light around and scattering around. So you can imagine haze as micro bounces. It is important when we analyze these shots to understand that having a physical object, or in this case, you know, a figure in our shot, does affect our rays. As a matter of fact, for example, even the frame of the window creates shades in it, okay? And this is something we need to keep in mind, as well as the fact that, in some areas, the ray of light can pass through because it just passes in front of the subject, and you can see it on the lower section of the leg. But in some areas, it's just blocked by the body, so we do get the full depth of the blacks in these areas. And that's another key aspect when thinking about relighting and justifying lights. So again, this was a shot that I really liked, so we can park it here. As I said, we've taken a still for it, and we're good to go to another shot. In particular, let's go to this shot here. This, as you can see, has quite a lot of relighting. As a matter of fact, let me disable all the relighting that was done on this shot. And this is how it looked originally. And you can see there's a big difference. I created a lot of that original haze. You can see some key elements that are kept. So if I deactivate this and activate this, you can see that overall the silhouette on this area is staying true black, or at least it's staying as low as it needs. And let me pull back actually the scope for you so you can see it, okay? Again, if I go like this, you can see the bottom part here stays where it needs. The reason being, this light, okay, coming in, would definitely affect the wall and this wall here, less this wall here, right? This part's a bit less, but definitely a lot of this. But this part, that's all behind the body is blocking it, so there's no reason for the light to affect this part. Again, I don't want to be technical today, so I'm not gonna go specifically into how I did it, okay, that's for another video, but you can see that basically this was done here. So if I take this out and I just look at the haze that I created, that is going through everything, and this, okay, looks good, but as soon as we get back the silhouette, now this is looking proper, this is looking justified. Similar thing, we have a framing in the window. We see a hotspot here, so we do see a light source, and there's this part of the frame that is directly in front of it. And I'm not sure how much this will transparent on YouTube, but there's a dark line going across this haze that is actually due to this line. And again, that was done intentionally to justify lighting. Now, let's go to a different shot. Let's look at this shot here. This was a shot, it's different in terms of color, and you can see it here, but in terms of lighting is pretty similar. Okay, this is another environment, so we don't have the same haze, but still, we're shooting on the shadow side. You can see the levels are pretty much the same, top and bottom, so black level and bright level. But this shot was meant to go with this shot, which as is, it looks okay, okay? But the point is that originally, this shot didn't really have this much light up here. And so if you look at this compared to this, they don't match, okay? So this part of the wall and this part of the wall is different. So, an amateur move on this specific shot would have probably been to just take the highlights and push them. But if we do want to keep some truthfulness to the environment, this is the light that's coming up from here. So it should project sort of a rounded light going here, okay? And that's what we achieved here. One thing to keep in mind though, is that we do have the arm of the athlete going across it. And thus, one thing to notice is that if I take this out, okay, this shape here, okay, is taking in the glove and all the shadow areas of this arm. What we need to do as colorists is making sure that we preserve the truthfulness to the lighting. And so what we need to do is make sure that this part that naturally wouldn't be hit by this light stays dark. How do we do that? We do activate this node, which effectively is just a qualifier to the shadows, okay, that preserves this part. Effectively, this also gives a nice highlight to the glove, so our focus goes on the glove, which in this specific scene works really well. Let's now look at the final shot. In this case, there was quite a lot done, okay, to bring out the metallic. A lot was done here, okay. You can see right away the contrast here is a bit too stark. Especially if I pull my reference, you can tell the contrast here is a bit too much. You can see how dark the shadows are. The rays are not too bad. In this case, of course, the rays are passing in front of the silhouette in a lot of the regions, so we want to keep that. So this was done all with lift cam again, and it was mostly a lift in the shadows to match the dark areas. But it was also work to better create this shape that we see here, okay? Again, this is a different type of lighting. In this case, the rays are not passing in front of figure, so our figure needs to be quite dark. In this case, the rays are passing in front of her, so it makes sense that she is a bit softer. And you can see a big difference actually in between the top part where the rays are and the bottom part where they are not. As a matter of fact, there was some addition to those rays to make them a bit more strong, and you can see it here, okay. But these again did focus on isolating and making sure that, you know, this directionality is kept. Well, mates, we barely scratched the surface today, but believe me, justifying lights is crucial to grinding your shots into reality, both on set and in post-production. Next time, we're going to discuss exposure and contrast ratios. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and please let me know in the comments what you would like to see next. Thank you for watching.